think of this. I'm in college and they ask me to talk to the incoming freshman class. So I do. This is film school. So I ask them, how many people in this room are in school to become a director? And almost every single person in the room raised their hands. Then I asked how many people want to be a producer, how many people want to be in sound, how many people want to be a cinematographer even. Significantly fewer hands were raised. For some, only a single hand was raised in the entire freshman class. I think about this moment a lot, in how competitive the film industry is, but also not all skills are created equal in terms of getting a job and being in this competitive industry. Of course, no matter what you get into, there's a certain level of competitiveness, but some jobs have a little less competition than other jobs. In this episode, we're going to talk about some of the top hard and soft skills you need to join the film industry, especially because it is so competitive.
Pocket change, pocket fame, film in the spot. Will I have to scream when we hit play in the dark? Innovation, creation on a shoestring beat. Join the journey, feel the heat in everything.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Katya Alexander. I have been an indie producer for 10 years. I sold my first feature to Abamarama. I had a feature win South by Southwest. It was sold to IFC and became a trending film on Hulu. I'm also an alumni at the Tribeca Film Festival. I've been to the Venice Film Festival. I worked on the Las Vegas Sphere, which was a boot camp at the intersection between technology and entertainment. And now I'm the head of production at an up-and-coming studio called Fable Studios. I'm going to start this episode by talking about 5 hard skills that I think that every emerging filmmaker should know, and it will allow you to get more jobs. The first one, always sound design. When I was in college, there were very, very few people studying sound design and wanting to become sound designers. It is such a small and tight-knit community, and if you know how to do those skills, you can probably get a lot of jobs and pay some of your bills. It also helps your own films because if you know how to sound design your own projects, the quality of your film will immediately shoot up. Sound tends to be the thing that people ignore when making films, and it tends to be the most important thing on your film. If your film looks perfect but sounds terrible, for some reason, it will actually look bad. Whereas if your film looks okay but sounds amazing, it will look amazing. There's even free software you can use to start practicing sound designing, like Audacity and DaVinci Resolve. I highly suggest you take some of your films that you've shot, you put it into Audacity or DaVinci, and you just start practicing sound designing. Now, sound designing has a bunch of different levels to it. First of all, there is the sound design part, which is putting in ambient sound, putting in sound effects, putting in any little thing that can heighten the emotion of your film using the audio. It's a lot about adding things in. And if you have music, it's really great to sound design with the music because there's so many different things you can add to the music and the music will add to the film, and they really work off of each other in a major way. Another part of sound designing is literally just making the dialogue sound good. That's going in and editing any pops or any weird sounds that you can hear, even sometimes hearing the director yell cut and action. Most sound designers start with making the dialogue sound good and the basic ambient sound good before they start adding more sounds in because it's just easier to polish it in that way. And then the third step is mixing it all together, figuring out what each level is supposed to be, especially being able to hear the dialogue over all of your sound design and your music. Very important, something that's criticized a lot lately. But making sure that the levels are good is really, really important. I really suggest you find YouTube channels that are talking about sound design and how to do it and trying to learn from some of the best that are out there. If you know sound design really well, it can become a side hustle for you where you could be making money sound designing people's projects, doing sound on set. It allows you to meet tons of people and it gives you this transition into being a director or a writer if that's a path that you want to go down. The next hard skill I wanted to talk about was color grading. That was really the path that I personally went down, and it served me so well. So when I was in college, there were not a lot of colorists, and I decided to study being a colorist. I colored most of the People's BFA films, and it allowed me to build a portfolio in coloring so that when I was finished with college, I could make money from color grading. This especially came in handy during the pandemic when people really couldn't leave their houses. There weren't a lot of sets, but there were a lot of projects in post-production for a while. So I was able to pay my bills as a colorist and be safe at home. It was extremely, extremely helpful. Also, being a colorist taught me how to be a post supervisor because the colorist is the last person to really touch the film and is where all the technical mistakes are shown. Even the technical mistakes of like, these files are not relinking properly. All of the little corners that you cut along the way, they come up when you start color grading. So being the person that saw all the problems that were arising and how they could have prevented it if they had done blank and blank and blank, it allowed me to become a supervisor because I started building my own post workflows that fed into coloring perfectly. And then people started hiring me as a producer and a post supervisor, and it ended up being this amazing Trojan horse almost into the career that I ultimately wanted. It's also something I still use when I'm producing. A lot of the times if I'm producing a super low budget thing, we don't have the money to bring on an entire post supervisor, an entire post producer. I know I can take those roles, and sometimes I even end up coloring the movie because colorists can be extremely expensive. It's the same thing with sound designing. If it's something that you know how to do, immediately your films are a much higher quality because you can add these little details to your film after you filmed it. Again, just like sound designing, there are tons of free programs for color grading. My favorite free program, which is basically the industry standard, is DaVinci Resolve. Of course, there's a version of DaVinci that you have to pay for, but I mostly use the free version because I don't always have my little key with me to give me access to the paid version that I have. And so sometimes on a jam, I just use the free version and the free version gets my project done. Again, just like for the sound designing, I highly suggest looking it up, following the greats and figuring out how they do that, learning from them, and then using those skills within your projects and potentially to find more jobs and more money. The next hard skill that I think is extremely important is editing. Not just slapping things together, but editing for emotion. There are so many different breakdowns of some of the top movies and the top TV shows about, they cut to this close up. And that's why this moment hit so hard. It wasn't just like, okay, this is coverage, this is coverage, this is coverage. Editing for emotion to have the audience really feel something, that skill will get you so far. Again, within your own projects because your projects will be better, but also editing and working in post-production is a very lucrative part of the industry. I know for myself, I'm always looking for people who work in sound, who work in color, who are editors, always. And so if you can break into that part of the industry, it's an amazing place to network, to show your skills. And when you are directing, knowing how to edit, knowing how to do all these things will make you make the right decisions on set. Of course, with editing, a lot of it does become a gut feeling after a while, but you have to sort of exercise that muscle before it becomes a gut feeling. Something I suggest you do is watch these cinematic breakdowns of the best movies and sometimes even the worst movies. I have learned so much from movies that were edited poorly and someone explaining to me why it was edited poorly and why that scene didn't feel right in my gut, as well as why certain scenes felt amazing and really pushed the entire story forward. So I highly suggest you watching as many of those videos as you can and start applying those techniques to your own filmmaking. And once you start doing it manually, it starts becoming a gut feeling that is much easier to act on. Some things to look up is watching a scene with the sound off just to see the emotion that comes across on screen. Analyzing the pacing, when should the pacing of a scene shift and what does that do to the emotion of the scene? And I would practice editing a scene in many different ways and see how it feels to watch each of those back and what you can learn from each time that you edited it. The fourth hard skill I would suggest is creative producing. People think that producing is all about logistics, like making budgets and making schedules and finding the locations, but producing is so much more than that. Producing is also casting the project, figuring out if this project is something that would sell, and if not, what subtle changes can you make to it so that it would sell better. Creative producing is understanding the industry as a whole and where your film would fit inside of it. Have it be who's going to watch your film, and because of who's going to watch your film, who should be in your film, and because of who should be in your film, what should the themes of your film definitely touch. If you can study to be your own producer, you're basically your own CEO and your entire career is in your own hands. I would definitely study those other skills of like making a budget, making a schedule. That's extremely important as well. So make sure that you do know those things. But I would also start following all of the film news, read Variety, read Deadline, see what things are being sold to who and why and when and who's a part of it and how those people became a part of it. Who did they know on the project? Is there a producer that's working with a bunch of actors that they usually work with? How do they all know each other? And then another thing to look up is how do you build pitch decks and lookbooks? Because those are going to be the things that sell your film. What does a winning pitch deck look like? Not just a good one, not just a pretty one, but one that has the right information that makes people want to pull the trigger on your project. And also studying indie funding strategies. There are so many different things like getting a fiscal sponsorship so that when people give money to your project, it's actually the equivalent of donating to charity and they're able to write that off on their taxes. Or finding grants, doing gap financing, crowdsourcing, going through and understanding how indie films are actually funded, who is funding these films, will again put your career in your own hands. If you're the person that can get the money, you are everything to that project. And then the last hard skill that I would really suggest you knowing is short form distribution strategies and marketing. Again, if you know how to distribute your film and you know how to market your film, you know how to get eyeballs, that will be everything in your career. Not a lot of people know how to do that stuff. I would even say that I don't really know how to do that stuff. I tend to hire someone to do that stuff for me when I'm working on a really important project because I don't know how to do that stuff as well as other people do. For that, I would study like marketing and social media, even how AI might help you market, how it can cut a lot of the workload off of your shoulders so that you can do more things with less. I would study 15 to 30 second storytelling hooks and how to do that, how to get a TikTok to go viral. I would look up what makes a good trailer and how do you get people interested in your project using just a minute of footage. And also, how do you reach out to publications so that they are interested in your project and they want to talk about your project? Having an EPK that lists all these different publications saying positive things about you and your film is so valuable. So those are some of the hard skills that I think you should know. But what are some soft skills that you should also know and have that will make you a better filmmaker, a better teammate, and someone that everybody wants to work with? The first one would be emotional resilience. You're going to face a massive amount of rejection in this career. And if every single rejection just makes you completely in cave on yourself, it's going to be very tough, and it's going to be tough to work with you. If you are the person that can be this pillar of strength for your team, especially in the face of rejection, and be like, it's fine, we're just going to move on, you become such a valuable asset to that team because it's not an easy thing to do. One of the things that I do to keep up my emotional resilience is I have a folder on my computer that says, "You are doing great." Anytime somebody sends me a compliment over text or Slack or email, I screenshot it and I put it in that folder. Or even like different wins when, I ended up in Deadline for the first time, screenshot it, put it in that folder. Every one of my major accomplishments and little tiny compliments is in that folder. So when I'm feeling down, I go through that folder, I read all these different things that people have been saying about me for years, and I'm reminded that, you know what, this is just one setback, and these setbacks in the past have gotten me where I am today. It's also really important that you talk to filmmakers who are in the same situation as you, especially because sometimes when something happens or something goes wrong, it feels like this is only ever happened to you and you're just bad at your job, when in reality, it might be something that happens to everybody. So here's an example. At the end of post-production, you usually have a delivery. You're delivering to festivals, you're delivering to your distributor, you're delivering to Hulu, hopefully. And a couple deliveries in a row for me went very poorly. Just the file formats kept being wrong and there kept being different issues with the files. There just kept always being some sort of issue that we had to redo, and it was extremely frustrating. We couldn't pass QCs and we sometimes missed deadlines, and I was like, wow, I'm terrible at this and this is so embarrassing. And then I started becoming open with other producers in my life about this. And every single producer unanimously said, yeah, that's just how delivery goes. And I started realizing that this was not a reflection on me. Delivery is just really hard. And most people have these experiences. When I'm getting an email from the person I'm delivering to that's like, you didn't pass the QC, it's nice to know that they're not just sending that email to me, they're sending the email to every other person that's delivering to them in that moment. So talking to people who are going through the same thing as you is so helpful to figure out what's normal, what's not normal, and just building that community will help your resilience. Another thing is collaborative leadership. This is an extremely collaborative industry. There's nothing you can do in this industry by yourself. Even if you have AI sitting in your bedroom making a film by yourself, it's extremely hard, and most people don't even want to do it. They might do it for their first film, but then they will only do it so that they can have a team later on to help them out. Knowing how to be collaborative and how to be a leader within that collaborative environment is very, very important. How do you make sure people feel heard? How do you make sure people feel respected? How do you make sure people feel like they want to be a part of your team? A lot of it is some emotional regulation, not being angry with people, being kind, being collaborative. And also it's trusting the crew that you hired to do the job that you hired them for. If you've hired them to do something and you're just sitting there telling them exactly how to do their job every single day, it's very frustrating for them and everybody involved. So there's a level of trust, of letting go, of collaboration. Being kind and clear is a superpower. Another soft skill that is so important is creative flexibility. Things will never go exactly how you want them to go. And it's very important to be making quick decisions in the moment that will push your project forward and hopefully even make it better. I remember I was producing this short film a couple years ago, and we lost our location the night of. We didn't know how the movie would end. So basically we needed a drive-in theater at the end of the movie. And we lost that location and we couldn't get it back. And so I started talking to the director and the writer, and I was like, well, I do have this bar. I know it's not a drive-in theater, but the bar is like crazy, you know? It has like these crazy designs, these crazy checkered floors. There's like rabbits everywhere. I mean, it's the most insane bar I've ever seen in my life. All these like mind control symbols. I think it might be a good replacement. So we rewrote the script to take place in this bar, and every single person who watched the film said that the bar was the best part because the bar fully symbolized what the entire movie was about, which was like this government mind control experiment. And this bar that had all this like mind control art and these checkered floors and these red accents, people were like, that is such a good end to this movie. We changed even how the movie ended, and it was a better ending. So being able to be flexible creatively will sometimes make your film be better because of a setback instead of worse. The next soft skill is emotional intelligence, especially when you're working with artists and creatives. Being able to be kind and gentle and understand them and understand their needs and meet those needs is extremely important. An example, so whenever I'm starting a new project with new people, one of the first things I try to figure out about each person is, how do they like to be thanked? Do they like a really big public thank you? Do they like a little gift? Do they like a thank you card? Do they like something in writing? Do they want me to keep it private and just say thanks? Because once you figure out how people like to be thanked, how people like to be corrected, you're gonna have such a better working relationship with each other. Having that EQ and wanting to understand people, wanting to help people, it'll help you in your career and it'll make people want to work with you. And the last soft skill that I think you should know just for this list, there's obviously many skills out there, it would be follow-up discipline. Discipline in general, very important, but follow-up discipline would be when you've applied for a grant, following up with those people. When you've met somebody, following up with those people. Constantly following up with people, saying hi to people, making sure you're on the forefront of people's minds. Doing it properly, doing it authentically, but making sure that you're doing that because people are not going to be chasing you. Grants are not going to be chasing you. Financiers are not going to be chasing you. People who are offering jobs, they will not be chasing you. So you need to make sure that you're on the forefront of their minds by following up, staying in touch, and being someone that they talk to regularly. For myself, people will sometimes email me and they just ask me a question that's on their mind. And I'm like, oh, right, that person. Like, that's awesome. I'm so excited to hear from them. I will say there's never been a person that's reached out to me that I've been like, ugh, that's so annoying. Never. It's always so wonderful to hear from somebody. So working out and flexing that muscle is just following up with people and making sure that you're on the forefront of people's minds is so important. Do you think there's any hard skills or soft skills that I've missed? Or do you think there's any other research terms for those hard skills or soft skills that people should look up? If there are, please leave it in the comments. I'm sure that everybody would love to hear more about this topic, as well as if there's any topics or questions that you want me to cover, please comment them below and I will do my best to respond and or make an entire episode about it.